What's going on, everybody? Welcome in to our members Q&A for the week. Thank you so much for being here. Already saw some unbelievable questions in the chat, so I'm excited about this one already. Interesting day in the NFL. We've got Robert Saleh already fired. That's an interesting point of discussion and conversation. I'm sure maybe it'll get brought up in chat a little bit here, but that makes this a little bit of an interesting day. The Aaron Rodgers deal to the Jets kind of just keeps getting more interesting and interesting. But yeah, well, I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit. But again, thank you guys so much for being here. I'll get into questions right away. Got about 45 minutes today, and then I got to prep. I'm going to be talking to Paul Brettel at the top of the hour for tomorrow's episode. So excited about that as well. Kevin, we will start with you today. Saw your video with Justice and his tweet about Rashan Gary's get off. His explosiveness isn't there from the naked eye, and the stats kind of show it. It does, again, track as slower than it's ever been in his career so far. So the stats are the stats. I don't think by any stretch of the imagination he looks completely lacking in explosiveness or slow by any means. I don't think it's for a lack of effort. And as I'm going through, I'm just finishing up my defensive grades. I've got about 5-6 plays left to grade in this one. I don't think it's a bad game from Rashan Gary. I don't think it's a good game. I don't think it's an impactful game, but I don't think he had a bad game. I think that's like the tough thing is when you get to first round draft status and when you get to huge contract status, right? The expectation is here. And nobody, I don't think, would argue that Rashan Gary is coming close to living up to expectations and what we all want out of him. I don't know if, again, anyone that would make that argument. I don't think, though, that this was like a bad game. Like a bad game would be negative grades or constant negative grades. I didn't see it that way. He's probably going to grade neutral, maybe even slightly positive in this one, which is fine. It's not the worst thing in the world. At least he's not grading negative, right? I do think I have slight negative on him for the year. And I do think I have a slight negative on, or a negative 2.0, I think, going back to week 13 last year. So it's not like it's going great, but I do think this game is going to grade out okay for Rashan Gary. And yeah, he's at negative 0.55 for the year. So he's still after this one, unless something crazy happens in these last few plays, I would expect him still to be graded in the negative through the season so far. And, sometimes there's a play that I just posted on Twitter today. He has he goes against Havenstein one-on-one and he rips up, and then with the same arm comes back and hump moves him, Reggie White style, throws Havenstein to the ground, and he's got the quarterback dead to rights, and he does it like that. He gets there and Stafford's got the ball out for a completion already. So like sometimes it's just unlucky. He had the sack taken away by Preston Smith with the encroachment penalty a couple weeks ago. Like I'm not saying that this is all just Rashan. I'm not saying it's all, but it hasn't clearly been good enough. And Green Bay needs a better version of Rashan Gary if they really want to come close to reaching their ceiling, especially on the defensive side of the ball. So he has to be the leader and the front runner of that defense to really be the impact guy. Like or teams are going to have to constantly double him. And then you are going to have to, everyone else is going to have to win their one-on-one matchups, but it just hasn't been that way so far. And again, not brutal, but nowhere near good enough. And I think we can all kind of see that through the first 5 weeks of the season. Okay, Ant, what is your beverage choice in the bowl? Depends. A lot of times if I'm at the game, well, obviously if I'm in the press box, it's just going to be a mellow yellow. If I'm in the bowl, I don't always drink. If I am drinking, usually I will get like an Oktoberfest is usually like this time of year's perfect Oktoberfest season. So that's usually my drink of choice, but sometimes it's just a soda as well. But probably this Sunday will probably be in that Oktoberfest category. So looking forward to that. I will not be painting my face on game day. I think I painted it once for a high school game in like a homecoming when I was like 16, like something like that. I think that was the only time I've ever painted my face. And there's no really way to see me. I'm in the north end zone. You would never be able to pick me out or anything like that. But if there was a field goal to the north end zone side, you could look really close. And I don't even know if I've ever seen myself on the cam and I know where to look, and I don't think I've ever seen it. So probably not going to see me. I'm in the north end zone, though, row 35. Early thoughts on Marvin Harrison Jr., best DB matchup. I would lean a little bit on this one for if everyone's healthy to do Jair on Harrison and then Valentine on Wilson. I think that's probably what I would go with in this one. Nixon in the slot, but my guess is they might just play sides, and then we'll see what they do with Stokes and Valentine. Wasn't a great week for Eric Stokes this past week, or the week before that, or really the week before that, or really last year, or the year before that. But he had some good plays as a rookie. Yeah, I don't know. Stokes is a whole conversation in and of itself. I don't think, and this kind of goes back to the Gary conversation a little bit. I don't know. Stokes has not been good. So it's different than Gary. It's for sure different than Gary. I still don't think it's quite to the level of people just being like, get rid of the guy or whatever. I'm not there yet. And Justice and I kind of talked about this for today's episode of like, I think there's maybe a situational role for him, certain matchups. I think there is certainly a role for him in the NFL. I don't think he's just this not worthy of being in the NFL guy, but to be any sort of unquestioned starter or anything like that, that doesn't seem right to me. And I do think Valentine is the better corner. Although I don't think, like this past week, I don't think Valentine was great in this one, but he was coming back from injury. I still have more faith in Valentine going forward. The coaches talk about all the time getting the best five on the field when it comes to O-line. Who are the best five for the secondary? Talked to Justice about this one as well. For me, Valentine and Jair on the outside, McKinney at safety, and then rotate, a little bit of Evan Williams and Bullard at safety, and a little bit of Bullard and Nixon at that slot corner. So, again, probably about 75% Nixon, 75% Bullard, and maybe 50% Evan Williams out of those remaining snaps is kind of what I would do. So, yeah, that's how I would probably go with it. I put Stokes on the bench, Valentine on the bench, and yeah, just kind of get those six guys in. And then if you go into dime, then I would put probably Nixon and Bullard in the slot with Williams and McKinney at safety. And in base, I'd probably go Valentine and Jair at corner, and then Bullard and McKinney at safety. Where should Romeo be in the pecking order of the wide receivers since he served his suspension? This is one of those, Parker, that is impossible for me to answer because we don't know exactly what the situation is, right? And this is where you just have to trust Matt LaFleur to have his pulse on the team and know what is best. If he feels like giving Romeo his spot back, just unequivocally, no questions asked, if he feels like that is going to upset other players on the team, being like, dude, this guy just left us for a week and he's just going to come back after a 1-game suspension and we're going to act like everything's normal. If he feels like that's a problem, then he's going to have to back Romeo up in that rotation a little bit and say, hey, you got to earn your way back. If he wants to set precedent in some way to make sure that this sort of behavior doesn't happen again, if he feels he needs to do that for a young locker room, he might need to put Romeo down on that rotation a little bit and have him earn his way back. Or if the receivers in the locker room are saying, hey, we're not worried about Romeo, we've got his back, he's going to be, we still want him to be the guy in this wide receiver room, and it feels like they can just move on, and this is not going to be an issue, and the Romeo situation's done and over with, and Matt LaFleur feels confident in that, then you go and you give him his spot back, the exact same spot that he was in prior to the suspension, you move on and you go forward. And I don't have a great answer to that because I don't know what the situation is. How Romeo handled that conversation on Monday, whether he was remorseful and apologetic and it was true and sincere, or whether it was half-hearted, or whether it was just like, yeah, I'll be here, but I'm not going to be happy about it. Like, those are three very different responses. And I don't know which one it was. And that goes a long way in defining of, what kind of role you want to give him moving forward and how you want to move forward with him just on the team moving forward. So I think this is a big week for Romeo, but I very much trust Matt LaFleur to have the pulse on the team and know what direction to go in. My hope is that they can just reinsert him and that will not lead to any further issues. And that gives Romeo the confidence of like, hey, this is done and past. I've served my suspension and let's just move forward. I think that's what's best for everyone. But again, a lot of that's up to Romeo and again, what Matt feels is best for the team. Love and football. Not to beat a dead horse with Romeo questions, but do you think this incident is a sign of things to come as far as him resigning down the line? Or there's no 5th-year option for Rome. He's a 4th-round pick. So that only exists for 1st-round picks. Or will it be actual ancient history? I think that's up to Romeo. It doesn't, the big thing is it doesn't help him, right? Like, it certainly doesn't help his contract extension talks or big sort of deal. Even if he's trying to get one with another team, the fact that he quit on a team for a week is never a great sign. So this did nothing to help Romeo in that regard. But if Romeo just comes back from it and is better for it and learns from it, like, we all make mistakes. And if we legitimately learn from them and become better for it, and now know not to make those mistakes moving forward. And as Matt LaFleur said, this was a one-off. This was not anything that they've ever experienced with Romeo in the past. All right, I think everyone can move on, and it will help you make that decision down the road. But it certainly does not help Romeo in any way. And I think, again, how Romeo deals with this and what he does move, maybe he uses this as motivation. And maybe the next year and a half, he just goes on an unbelievable tear and we see the best Romeo Doubs we've seen. In which case, yeah, he'll very much be in a discussion for a new contract with Green Bay. Or maybe this thing just continues to fester and they can't put it past him. And they maybe go in a different direction, whether that's via trade or just letting him walk after his free agent or his contract is done as a free agent. I don't know. This is definitely one where it's just going to have to be, time will tell. And we're going to have to wait and see. The completely uncoachable Rodgers strikes again. Yeah, I don't know how much Rodgers had to do with this. The initial reports are this was not an Aaron Rodgers thing. This was a Woody Johnson thing. I mean, you don't know what's going through Woody Johnson's head with any of this. You don't know what's going on in Rodgers' head. You don't know who knows? This is the big thing. I said in the offseason with all the talk about the Jets, I said, short the Jets. I'm like, I'm shorting the Jets in any way possible because there was real legitimate dysfunction, even with Rodgers and stuff involved last year while Rodgers was out. And I did not believe in any way that just bringing Rodgers back was going to clear that, all of that dysfunction. And where there is clear and obvious dysfunction, it doesn't just usually get better overnight. Now, winning can cure a lot of things. So if maybe they had started 5-0 or something, 4-1 and looked really good, are we talking about maybe it being a little bit different? Sure. But they're 2-3 and they have not looked good through 5 games. And Rodgers is very clear. I don't know if he's going to make it through the season the way that he continues to get hit. You have a not great offensive line. You have a very static approach, no motions, no anything, because that's what Rodgers wants. And Rodgers cannot avoid things in the pocket anymore. He's standing there and he doesn't have that mobility to escape. Like, that is basically completely gone. So when you have an offensive line that is up and down, and when you have a defense like last week with Minnesota that's just going to come after them, you're going to see that more and more, especially without the motions and the orbits and anything like that. They know what you're doing. They can come after, Aaron any way that they want to come after him. He can't get off of his spot. And yeah, he might beat you with his arm on a few different occasions, but it is not a recipe for success. We'll see. My guess is Davante Adams is the next, domino here. And because the Jets are all in, right? They are all freaking in. They put all of their chips in the Aaron Rodgers table and they said, you take us here. And they know that if this goes poorly, it's going to, and even Aaron said, if this doesn't work out this year, it's going to end awful for everyone. So yeah, they're going to continue to go all in. And I would expect Davante Adams to be there sooner rather than later. All right, a couple super chats here. Let's add Saleh to the staff. So there was already a report from Michael Silver who said that Robert Saleh plans to go on vacation, not take any jobs, because the 49ers fans are definitely wanting Robert Saleh as well. He's not going to take any jobs this season, and he's going to prepare for opportunities in 2025. So that's the report on Robert Saleh. I do not expect him to be in Green Bay. Now, if I'm Matt LaFleur, am I calling and saying, hey, I know you're going to take your vacation. When you're done, we'll let you do remote work and you can, be a consultant from afar, from home, and just do some kind of side work for us. Remember, LaFleur and Saleh are super tight. I would still make that phone call. Clearly, any of talk of Robert Saleh being defensive coordinator, that's never going to happen. 0% chance. Not in 2024, at least. Like that's crazy talk. So that's not going to happen. I do think you would also need to be careful of, if you just brought Robert Saleh in as a senior defensive consultant, like, you're bringing in one of the foremost defensive minds, which is great, by the way. That's not a bad thing, but you need to support your brand new defensive coordinator that you just hired and put a bunch of faith into, and having him sort of, I don't want to say like look over his shoulder, but like, that's just like a weird, like you're almost undercutting what Jeff Hafley is already and what he's doing. That's a weird dynamic, but do I think you can bring him in as a senior consultant and say, hey, we want you to look at the offense. We want you to look at the defense. We want you to look at the special teams. We want you to watch tape on everything and see offensively as you as a defensive mind, Robert Saleh, how would you attack what we're doing on offense? What are the holes and what do we need to be able to build in to beat what you would do against it? Because you're one of the best minds. I think that can help Matt LaFleur. Defensively, go watch the defensive tape. What are we missing? What are some things that you would have done with this sort of structure that could have potentially been better? So not to say Robert's coming in and just, throwing all these ideas and being like the new voice on the defensive side. Look at everything, offense, defense, special teams, and say, hey, what do you see? What are the holes, gaps, anything on all sides of the ball? That I think you could do. I think you could do that as a remote from afar sort of thing. But it sounds like that's not going to be in the card. So I'm not sure how much we need to discuss it. Per Mike Silver, he is going to take the rest of the year off. The McPain train. You think that the edges are being asked to rush a bendy style, or is that a player-to-player thing? We've seen good Gary. He isn't moving the same. I don't think the bendy thing is a coaching thing. I really, really don't. I think there's certain times where you have to be able to get around the edge, but they're not asking that. They're more often than not contain or collapse. That's usually what you kind of want from those guys. So yeah, this to me is not a coaching thing. This is an execution thing. And right now the pass rush is not executing at the level that it needs to, which is why we're seeing some of these issues, just not getting to the quarterback. All right. Yep, we talked about that. We talked about that. Talked about that. For the love of everything green and yellow, can we please bench Quay for Cooper now? I've never seen a linebacker targeted so bad to the point if you run him out, you can run through him. I don't see that happening anytime in the near future. I think we're going to see more Edgerrin Cooper, but I think it'll be more at the expense of Isaiah McDuffie. I'm not quite to the level of, I think Quay is just this complete defensive liability. Not there. I think actually for the last few weeks, he's played okay football. I think that, again, this is a little bit of a burden of expectations being a first round pick. I think if Quay's a fourth round pick, you're like, all right, I like what Quay's doing. Like, I think it looks a lot better. Not saying it's perfect, not saying it's good enough, not saying teams don't attack him from time to time. It does, but I'm not completely there of like, this is just a wasted player and get rid of him or anything like that. So can that change over the course of the next month or two? Maybe. Do I think we need to see more Edgerrin Cooper? Absolutely. But I think it's going to still be a lot of Quay and Edgerrin moving forward. I like how they're attacking with those two guys, being more downhill players. I think that's a good thing. But yeah, they'll continue to work with Quay. Hopefully he can continue to get better. I don't think it's been like the first couple of weeks were rough with Quay. These last few, I don't think have been as bad. And I do think he's made some small steps of progress over the course of the last few weeks. Feels like Gary is setting himself up for failure by not working to his strengths and setting up the opposing tackle for an easier time in a legal hold. Is this a longstanding issue or newer? Tech, when I've talked about this for at least 3 years now, of he goes through these spurts where he likes to be more of a speed rusher, more of a bender on the edge rusher, and it just does not play to his strengths, like you mentioned. To me, he is a speed to power bull rush sort of guy. And then you can throw a counter in every once in a while, but that needs to be his go-to, his bread and butter, what he does. TJ Watt doesn't have a full, he does a lot of the same things over and over. He just does it really, really well. If Rashan Gary just masters his bull rush, he is going to cause a bunch of problems for offensive tackles over and over if he can continue to do it very, very well. So to me, that's what I want to see him do. And yes, this has been an issue for him for a while now. Go Pack, go baby at work, but had to drop a like and comment. Much love as always, Pack-A-Day fam. King Kermit, thank you so much for that. Sorry that you're at work, but hopefully you can catch this a little bit later. Dan Miller, A-Rod is a prick. I think there, like most people, are two sides to Aaron, and I have seen some very awesome sides of Aaron Rodgers. I've seen some not so awesome sides of Aaron Rodgers, and yeah, I'll leave it at that. I think there are multiple different things that play there. And I think there's some things that he's really awesome with, including, the charity work that he does is in his hometown. I've seen him do stuff for children's childhood cancer, stuff that he did above and beyond. I think there's a lot of that stuff that sometimes goes unnoticed. I think sometimes he can be cantankerous. And I think, yeah, I'll just leave it at that. I think there's two sides there. I wish one of those sides would come out a little bit more and the other side a little bit less. But I will say, Green Bay made the right move. The Jets went all in on Aaron. It is not working out great so far. And Goody and Matt deserve a lot of credit. Matt for, I think, how he kind of got the most out of Aaron while Aaron was still here. And Goody, I think, recognizing, especially with that contract the way that it was time to move on. And they did so at the right time, and we're still able to recuperate a bunch of draft capital and get off that contract all at once. I think Green Bay deserves a lot of credit for that. Do you think Green Bay makes the full transition to Bullard in the slot and Williams as the second safety? I do not. Could be wrong. I think when everyone's back, I think we see Jair on one side. I think we see a little bit of a rotation with Stokes and Valentine on the other side. I think we see Nixon in the slot, Bullard and Williams at safety, with a bit of Williams at safety, a little bit of Bullard in the slot. And I think we see it a little bit that way. That's my guess, but we'll see. I still think they like Nixon in the slot, and I think that's honestly the right decision still, as I've kind of said this entire time. There was a play in coverage where Bullard got toasted this past week. Stafford overthrew it, but Bullard was beat by a few yards on the play, and he held on the play too and got away with it. But yeah, I still think there's some deficiencies in pure man coverage and just pure coverage for Bullard. I love Bullard. He's a really good player, and I do think you can play him in slot some, no question about it. But I would have a lot of trepidation about playing him primarily in the slot, or even half the time in the slot, to be honest. Will we move on from Gary next season? Big cap? No, I would be stunned if Rashan Gary's not on the 2025 roster. 2026, totally different discussion, but I'd be pretty shocked if he's not on the 2025 roster. They did start playing LVN more this past week. That was the most snaps that he's got so far. And I think he was second. I think he was second to Rashan. Rashan had 49 snaps. LVN had 42. Preston had 39. And Igbare had 28. So yeah, he was second this week with 42 snaps. And that was his most snaps that he's played so far this year. If you look at his snap count by week, 19, 20, 22, 24, 42. So it's gone up every single week. And this was the most significant jump that he had. I mean, you look at the first 2 weeks combined, he played 39 snaps, and this week he played 42. So he's definitely getting more and more snaps. All right. I think when Jair comes back, we will see Williams at safety and Bullard in the slot, or back to Bullard at safety. We just talked about that one. Also, we start Cooper. Again, I do think Cooper next to Quay is just going to become more and more commonplace. And I think they'll start to phase out Isaiah McDuffie, probably make Isaiah McDuffie more of that third linebacker. I think we'll see Quay still be the one, Cooper be the 2, McDuffie be the 3, and then phase out Eric Wilson from that number 3 spot. Regarding A-Rod, I hope that when it is his time, that J Love leaves the stage more gracefully than his 2 predecessors. Favre and Rodgers have both tarnished their legacies. There's definitely a bit to that, obviously, in different ways. But, I will say I thought Aaron's handling of the divorce at the end was a lot more amicable, respectful. And, obviously when he went sort of scorched earth and said and demanded the trade prior to that, and then came back and whatever, that was a little bit different. But at the end, I thought it was a lot more amicable and respectful, and allowed for him, will allow for him to come back and retire a Packer and things like that. So, listen, these things are weird, difficult. Sports are complicated. Almost every legendary player, almost every player ends up playing for more than one team in their career. I think part of it is we just have to understand that. Now, again, how maybe some of it was gone about, I get, not ideal, but yeah, they're both retire as Packers legends. And, but yeah, we'll see what happens with Jordan Love. And to your point, hopefully it does go a little bit more gracefully. McKinney, early favorite for Defensive Player of the Year. TJ Watt and Surtain are probably the other 2 favorites. Yeah, I don't think it's going to be easy for him to win it in the end. If he can continue doing this, sure. But if we're saying through 5 weeks, yeah, he should absolutely be in that conversation. 5 picks and a fumble recovery, plus all the other stuff that he's doing in a 5-week period is insane. And he has been massively impressive. So should he be in that conversation right now? Yes. Do I think he's probably going to be there by the end of the season? Probably not. But man, is he playing out of his mind. Next year, cornerback, linebacker, offensive line. I'm assuming that you mean for the draft. Defense is still going to be a priority. Offensive line is still going to be a priority. I think corner, defensive line, offensive line are probably your top 3, right? Yeah. Yeah, you're not going to need safety. Stokes will be gone, so you'll definitely need corner. Linebacker will be interesting. They'll definitely spend draft capital on it because McDuffie's probably gone. But you have Hopper and Cooper, and Quay. So you're probably not going to put significant resources into it. Slayton could easily be gone along the defensive line. Preston Smith could be gone at defensive end. So I think they'll invest still there in the defensive line. And then offensive line, Josh Myers could be gone. I think you still have the starting lineup that you need if you want it to be, probably something like Rasheed Walker, Jordan Morgan, Elton Jenkins, Sean Ryan, and Zach Tom. Some of those guys could be in a little bit of a different order. And then you do have Jacob Monk up and coming still as a potential interior depth piece, but you're going to want to continue to develop the depth there. So I think running back, you're not going to really need, right? Jacob's probably back, Wilson back. And then, what's his face? Why can't I think of his name? Marshawn Lloyd back. Tight end, you're still going to have Musgrave, Sims, and Kraft. Wide receivers are all back, barring a trade of Romeo or something like that. So offensive line, defensive line, corner, probably the top three. How do we dial J-Love back a bit? It'll come naturally, Dan. I really believe so. We saw him play in rhythm of the offense and make the plays that are there and make the plays that he's expected to make. And we saw that all through the second half of last year. I think, again, just getting in that rhythm, slowing down a little bit, letting the game come to him a little bit more. We'll see that get better and better as the season goes along. Really, truly believe that. Thoughts on Saleh getting fired? Any impact for the Packers? Yeah, we talked about it a little bit. No impact for Green Bay. Again, it sounds like he is going to stay home and be a consultant. Not shocked if you would have told me if you would have told me before the season that Saleh got fired at some point during the year, would not have been surprised at all. I did find it shocking today. I didn't think at 2-3 at this point in the season that that's the direction that they would have gone in, but we'll see how it works out. And sometimes when you get the mess that you get in, you're like, we're going to go all in for this quarterback. It sounds great, but if it doesn't work, man, your head can be on a platter very, very quickly in those situations. And this has certainly not worked out for Robert Saleh in this situation. If you guess, how does Doubs' season play out? Again, this is a almost impossible one to predict without knowing the situation in the first, like the entire details of the situation in the first place, how he handled the situation, what Matt LaFleur is thinking with how to handle it moving forward. So really, really difficult to sort of parse that out. If I had to guess something, my guess is that they're able to put this behind him and Doubs goes kind of back to the role that he was having. That'd be my guess. That's my hope, but it could go still in a lot of different directions. So if I was beautiful, Packer fan showed out in LA, which next away game do you see a Packers invasion? Well, let's see what we got here. So at Jacksonville, I could see a lot of there's not many, I don't know how many hardcore Jaguars fans are still left. So I could see Jacksonville being a home game-ish for Green Bay. Chicago will be primarily Bears fans. Detroit will be primarily Lions fans. Seattle will be primarily Seahawks fans. Minnesota will be primarily Vikings fans. And that's it. That's all they have for the rest of the season on the road. So I would say your best bet is Jacksonville, October 27th. Yeah, that would be probably your best bet. Chicago, Detroit, Seattle, Minnesota, those will not be easy places to play. And I don't see a Packers takeover in any of those stadiums. So Jacksonville, definitely the best bet. Good question. Why are Gary and LVN struggling so much? Again, I don't think either of them are playing awful. I just don't think either of them are reaching their ceiling / expectations. I do think there is a little bit of everything that does play a part. At some point, all of it just becomes excuses. I think they've played some really good offensive linemen, not necessarily this past week, but I think they've played some really good offensive linemen. I think they've done a lot of containing on the mobile quarterbacks. I think there's been a lot of chipping and help, especially on Rashan. I think, I think there's certainly been, getting used to a little bit of this new defense. Like, I think there's a little bit of everything, but do I also think that they have gone out and just played great football? No, I don't. So to me, this is execution. It's going out and having these guys play to the level that they're capable of. And they just have to win their one-on-ones when they get them. And I know they're not always getting them, but when they do get them, they have to find a way to win them. And to me, that's the issue. I don't know that either of these guys in LVN or Rashan Gary are these dynamic pass rushers. They are big, strong, fast, physical guys that you need collapsing the pocket along with Kenny on the interior and whoever else is at that other defensive tackle spot. Collapse, make it, collapse around the quarterback. And then, one of those guys get off a block and go get him down. But just doesn't feel like there's enough cohesiveness on the defensive line. When we saw it against Tennessee, especially with some of the blitzes, it looked really great. but it hasn't been that frequent enough. And to me, this all comes down to execution. Techwin, I saw that Evan Williams got every defensive snap out snapping Bullard. He had a hell of a game, but he went from a handful of snaps to a full game. Did he simply earn it, or was it a good matchup? I think they saw against the Rams that the Rams didn't have a slot receiver that was going to give Bullard a bunch of trouble from a route running standpoint. And I think they thought that the Rams were going to run the ball a ton, so that they wanted a bigger defense on the field that would be a little bit more physical. And I think for that reason, you saw them go with one fewer corner and one more safety. You saw Bullard in the slot, Williams at safety. And then I think rather than, all right, when we go to base or whatever, let's move Bullard back to safety, I think they just allowed Bullard to say, we're just going to focus you in the slot this week. So when we have a slot corner, you're going to be there primarily, and then let Williams focus more on just that safety position. So I think that makes sense. I don't think this is a full-time change. I think this is probably more of a one-off. We'll see what they do this upcoming week. I think we could see a little bit more big nickel, but I think this was more matchup oriented against the Rams, and especially too with Jair being out, I think they were trying to get their best guys on the field. That'd be my guess. Wonder if an early extension came up in the meeting with Doubs. If so, they need to draw the line with him at one contract. Yeah, I'm not sure. Again, all of it is conjecture at this point. Could have been I don't know. I don't know that he would have been asking for a contract already. I think he probably wanted to play out this season and have a massive season first, but tough to say. Tough to say. How do you like the Packers' chance against the Cards this week? What parts of the game do you think we can dominate? And what do you think is an area of concern? I haven't watched the Cardinals tape yet, Wesley, so that's something I want to do a little bit more on before speaking on it too much. But I do like Green Bay's chances in this one. I think they're going to just get back on track offensively. I think they can move the ball against the Arizona defense. I'm not super concerned about anything that Arizona really does defensively. I do think Kyler Murray is going to be a major problem, and they're going to have a really good plan. Thankfully, they've had games against Jalen Hurts, Anthony Richardson, that helps prepare you for this a little bit, but he is a different cat. He will buy a ton of time. There will be, I promise you right now, just get ready for it. There will be some pull your hair out moments of Kyler Murray dancing around and creating big plays. It is just what he does, whether it's with his legs or with his arm. He is playing Madden. Like everyone else is playing real football, and Kyler Murray is playing Madden, because he will dance around and spin in circles and dip, dive, dodge, duck, whatever the other one is. Is it dodge twice? I don't remember. But either way, you will see him do crazy stuff, and then he'll take off and run for 50, 60 yards on a pop. He will throw it deep down the field for completions. It is not your typical brand of football, and he does it just a little different, and it is fun to watch. But get ready for some of those absolute pull your hair out moments, because he's going to make the secondary cover for an extraordinary period of time, and he's going to make the defensive lineman he's just going to do circles around him. So there will be frustration, I promise. But to me, limit Kyler Murray and take advantage of your opportunities on offense, because I think they will be plentiful in this one. Safety, the best position group on the team outside of quarterback. It might just be the best position group on the team. Listen, McKinney's out of his mind. He's playing unbelievable football, and you can make the argument that he's the best player on the team, or at least through the first 5 weeks of the season. You can absolutely make that argument. I think Bullard and Williams are really good and are going to be really good, but I still think you're seeing some rookie moments from them. So I don't think they're like completely finished products yet, where you're just like, yep, this is like, they're both unbelievable, but they're both plus players for this team. And it has gone through a major makeover, and it's a really, really good safety room. So it's in the conversation unquestionably, but I do still think those rookie safeties and Williams and Bullard still have a bit to learn before I'm just ready to crown it as the unequivocal best position group or anything like that. But they're playing really, really good football right now. Whose snaps did Evan Williams take last week, and do you think that will continue? We talked about this a little bit, but it was basically, again, they wanted to go big nickel. Evan Williams took the primary safety snaps. Javon Bullard moved to the slot primarily. Keyshawn Nixon played more outside, and they kind of did it that way. So there was a little bit of mixing and matching there and doing some different things, but for the most part, that was kind of their solution for the day. And no, I think it will change going forward. I don't think we can see some of that, but I don't expect it to be like a full game plan, especially with Jair coming back and Valentine getting healthier. I don't see them putting Nixon outside as much. I expect to see more Nixon in the slot, and maybe some mixing and matching with Bullard, Nixon, and Williams moving forward. Does Brenton Cox have to have that bend around the corner style? He does not. And watching when he played in preseason, that was the way he played. No, he is more of the physical type. And I'm not going to say like there's no bend, but like he is more of the strong physical, again, go through your face sort of defensive end. So that's the way he plays. In fact, he plays remarkably similar to the style that Rashan Gary kind of should be playing, quite frankly. In fact, in mini camp and OTAs, when I was watching them, at times I would have to do a double take because I'm like, is that Rashan or is that Brenton Cox? So that's more of the style that he likes to play. Yeah. This team hasn't played like we expected and has found a way to be 3-2. Pretty amazing coaching job so far. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if we can give credit for like saying, well, they haven't lived up to expectations, but they've still won some of the games. So kudos to everyone. Like, you also get some negative for not living up to the expectations that we expected so far, right? Like, there is some of that. I thought Matt did a masterful job in the 2 Malik Willis games. No questions about that. I thought they could have been maybe a little bit more ready for that first game. I thought the game plan was awesome. I thought the execution was terrible. A lot of that just goes on the players, but part of that falls on Matt. I thought in week 4, just getting down to a 28-0 deficit, like that just can't happen. You have to have your team more ready to go to begin that game. Cannot be 28-0. And then they found a way to get a win against the Rams while not playing their best. But I'd like to see them play their best. Like that's what I want to see. Go out and play your best. So yes, I think they've weathered a small storm. We're not talking, any crazy. And I know, not to bring up hurricanes right now in the world of what's going on, but they're not battling anything crazy like that. It's just more of some small storms. They've weathered it. Now, can they get some consistency the remainder of the year? The last scoring drive for the Rams was way too easy. I was surprised given how well the D played the rest of the game. Quite frankly, Eric Stokes got beat 3 times on that drive. That was what happened. Eric Stokes got beat. So they brought Javon Bullard off the edge on one, and then they dropped a guy over here, dropped one of their defensive ends, but Bullard won his one-on-one against the back and was there in an instant, but they threw on Stokes and got a completion. Then they brought, I might be getting these slightly mixed up, but they brought an extra guy on another blitz. Oh yeah, they brought an extra guy, and then everyone was in man coverage, and Stokes was one-on-one on the outside, and the guy did basically a post route, a skinny post, or just an in-breaking route. Stokes wasn't even close to it, and it goes for like 25, 30 yards on the play. And then he gets beat on the touchdown in the back right of the end zone, where the receiver fakes one way, goes the other. Stokes gets completely fooled by it, slips, and the receiver's wide open in the end zone. They weren't completely vanilla on that drive. They started a little bit vanilla, just kind of going in some zone, but they did that on almost every drive. And then they did do some creative stuff. They did bring some blitzes. And again, quite frankly, Eric Stokes just got beat 3 different times on that drive. So it was more to me. I just literally watched that drive just right before we got done here and graded out that drive. When I watched it, I didn't look at it and be like, my God, what is Jeff Hafley doing? Or this is way too soft. I looked at it as they had to go out and execute. They had good play calls on, and they didn't execute it when they needed to. And that to me was the bigger issue on that drive. What type of cornerbacks do you think Hafley takes for this defense? We thinking more speed, more size, or the more agile dudes? I mean, you want everything, right? You can't have you can't just have small guys because big guys will beat you. You can't have just speed guys because you can't cover routes. Then we see what happens with Eric Stokes. Again, if you're not agile, we see what happens with Eric Stokes. Like, you have to have a little bit of everything, right? So I guarantee you he wants good corners, but I think guys who can play, a man coverage and have that ability to have the oily hips and break on in breaking routes and things like that. I think that's what's going to be more important. A little bit more physical at the line of scrimmage, having the ability to tackle in the run game. We all want our cake and eat it too, right? He's going to want a little bit of everything, but I think the ability to play man and a little bit of press man is what he's going to really want out of those corners. You meant draft-wise. Gotcha. Salty Jordy, are we buyers at the trade deadline? Browns could fire sale guys like Denzel Ward or Myles Garrett. Well, they're certainly not going to be sellers at the trade deadline. I think buyers will be more dependent upon injuries or major weaknesses if they develop. I think they could be a small buyer, something I don't see like a Hassan Reddick. I don't see a Myles Garrett or a Max Crosby, a Devontae Adams, a Amari Cooper. I don't see anything like that. That I do not see. Do I think they could find maybe a small piece here or there that they could potentially add to this team that they think could help? Sure. I think they could. And I think, again, a lot of that could be predicated on injuries. But my guess is they stand pat at the deadline. But if you told me they either added or subtracted, I would definitely go in the add direction. Are Doubs and Watson off rookie contracts at the end of the season? No, they have one. They have this season and next season, and then they're both unrestricted free agents. But mostly out of the loop, what do we really know on the Doubs situation? I will ask you, Gabriel, to go back and listen to this one. At the beginning, we went through a couple different questions on this in greater detail. So just go back and listen to it. And we talked about this one pretty deep already. Myles Garrett in Green Bay, mercy, I just got lightheaded. I would, R.R. Smith, I would not get your hopes up in any way, shape, or form. So sorry about that. 5 weeks in and out, all pro kick returner has exactly one return. That is not good for NFL fans. This is something that Justice and I talked about when the rule first got made. They've got to move it to the 35. They have to move it to the 35. And it should have happened. It should have never been the 30 ever. It has to be the 35. It would be better if it was the 40 than the 30. It'd be better if it was the 50 than the 30. Like, you're just incentivizing teams still to kick it out of the end zone and take it at the 30. And that's not what we want, right? The NFL specifically stated they want kick returns in the NFL. Well, they're not getting them. So you got to fix it. And I would love to see it fixed now. I would love to see them say, we're moving it to the 35. And let's start there. I think it'll get changed next year in some capacity. I don't think they'll keep it the way that it is. I'm mostly okay, honestly, with not changing it in season because I don't think it's particularly fair. Even if you're a team that goes against Green Bay, right? Teams that already played Green Bay got to kick it out of the end zone. Teams that have to play against Green Bay now would have to kick it to Keyshawn Nixon, or get it at the 35. So it changes the competitive balance, even if it just a little bit. I'm not always a fan of that, but it never should have been the 30. And I'm hoping next year it's the 35 and they get that fixed. Trey Hendrickson, possible trade target in a few weeks if Bengals are really out of it and the Packers are doing well, has 1 year left on his contract. Let's take a look. Trey Hendrickson, 30 years old. No, he's got this year and next year left on his contract. So they would take 14.8 million. Let's say they'd probably be about 8 million left on this year's salary cap for the remainder of the year, 8 to 9 million, somewhere in that range, which is doable. And then he'd have a 1 year, $15.8 million cap hit next year. You'd probably move on from Preston Smith. But you'd be giving up draft capital as well. It would very much be dependent upon what they wanted in draft capital. Do I think you could have a discussion? Sure. Yeah, I think you could have a discussion. In an interesting way, I don't think Green Bay would ever do this, but an LVN for Trey Hendrickson trade would actually be sort of interesting in a way. Bengals get their young pass rusher that would be super cheap and that they can continue to develop, probably better than any draft capital that they're going to get. Green Bay gets in Trey Hendrickson, puts him opposite Rashan Gary, helps you this year and next year. Not the move that Green Bay, ever makes, but I don't hate it, Kevin. I would be fairly stunned if they went in that direction. Don't see it happening. But I like where your head's at. I like of all the trades that I've heard so far, that would be the one where I'd be like, yeah, I could see it. Like, it at least is feasible. It makes sense. What have you heard about Oladapo? Nothing, but this is exactly what I expected about Katan Oladapo. He missed all of camp. They're already struggling to get Evan Williams on the field. So you can't get the guy that's really good on the field. You're certainly not going to get Katan Oladapo on the field, right? And you could say, well, what about, could you make him into a linebacker? They can't get Edgerrin Cooper and Tyrone Hopper on the field enough. So they're not going to get Katan Oladapo on the field there. I just think that this was always going to be pretty much a redshirt season for Katan. Hopefully they don't ever need him, because that would mean that they had, injuries at the safety position, which is playing so well right now. But barring injuries, he will be a redshirt guy / from time to time, you might see him on special teams if he's active on game day. And that's it. And he'll come back next year and they'll see if they can find any sort of role for him. But he's going to be stuck a little bit behind Xavier McKinney, Javon Bullard, and Evan Williams, because those guys are not going anywhere anytime soon. And no, unless, again, there's injuries, and unless it's just some special team snaps, I don't see him getting on the field in any way. Are we looking at a Cooper quarterback spy game this week with the Cards? I think we will see plays where Edgerrin Cooper spies, Kyler Murray. I think we'll see plays where Quay Walker spies Kyler Murray, but I don't think they'll live in that. I think they'll change it up, and I think we will see a little bit of that. Why we don't see much? Are you asking, Matthew, why are we not seeing much kick returns? It's because teams don't want to kick to Keyshawn Nixon. Most teams in general are deciding just to kick it out of the end zone so they don't have to worry about it. And if you have a good kick returner like Keyshawn, the teams really aren't going to kick it to you. So they're going to kick it out and just make Green Bay start at the 30. And that's why you have to change it to the 35. You have to change it to the 40. You have to do something different. Otherwise, you're going to continue to get no returns and just, kickers continuing to kick it out of the end zone. Explain Greg Joseph to me like I'm 5. What do you want to know about Greg Joseph? Why they let him go? Because he didn't kick well in training camp at all. Not even a little bit. Now, I know he's kicked well so far for the Giants, is it? I think. I don't know. He had every opportunity in camp to make this team. Every opportunity. I would have, quite frankly, questioned Green Bay if they went with Greg Joseph coming out of camp. Not only did he not kick well enough in camp, not only is he not kicked well enough throughout his career, but he was on a huge slide at the end of camp. Like, he was kicking his worst at the end of camp. So to me, that was the decision that they should have made. I get that right now he's making some kicks in New York, but good for him, I guess. It was not looking that way in Green Bay, and I certainly understand the decision that Green Bay made. 3-2 with tons of improvement to come is great. Piss will be hot later this year. Currently simmering. I'm all for that. I think you're right. I think you're right. Someone suggests they just pull the kicker back further or call the end zone and out of bounds, basically force it into the landing zone. I think they could pull the kick back further, the kicker back further. That is one other option. And I'm not against that at all, because then it would also incentivize you to, if you wanted to kick through the end zone, well, then big leg kickers are going to have more value, right? Which I'm always for, adding some of that value in. So yeah, they could move the kicker back 5 yards, or they could make it that it's at the 35 or 40 if you kick it out of the end zone. I think either of those things improve kick returns and I think add to the value of the game. Personally, just hate the touchback getting further and further. Yeah, that's fine too. Then again, move the kicker back. Move the kicker back 5 yards, move the kicker back 10 yards. Do whatever you want to do. But 7 yards, I don't care. Like, just figure it out where you can actually get more returns. Because right now it's just a really boring brand of football every time there's a kickoff. It just sucks. You might as well use the bathroom. All right, friends, I am going to get out of here so I can prep for Paul Brettel. I've got most of it done already. But we'll talk to Paul in just a minute here. And then that will be posted later today for members. And tomorrow morning, well, you all listening are members right now. So it'll be posted today for you guys and then tomorrow for everyone else. Appreciate all the great questions as always. I will keep you posted next week with what day we do the members Q&A. Pack-A-Day live tomorrow, Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Central. Pack-A-Day happy hour, 4 p.m. Friday Central time. And then possibly a post-game show a little bit later on Sunday. We'll see how many of those Oktoberfests I have to drink at the stadium. Not to say that the show wouldn't be better if I was full of a bunch of Oktoberfest. It very well much probably would be, but we'll see how I'm feeling after everything. So either way, appreciate you guys a ton. Thank you so much for being members. I will see you all very soon, but until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.